هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, welcome all to the continuation of the 40 Hadith classes, the Matan Arba'in al-Nawawiyah, the text of Imam Nawawi's famous 40 Hadith compilation and collection. We took a break for last Monday because it was the day of Arafah, and many would have fasted and then gone home to eat because they wouldn't have eaten the day, and it's also a kind of a customary time in which mosque committees like to clear the mosques as well, alhamdulillah. So I thought for those two reasons, and maybe some people had to go to the early Jummah prayer, early Eid prayer, I thought for those reasons we'd cancel the class. So we've had a gap. And if you remember 2 weeks ago, we just began Hadith number 1. We began, is that right? Hadith number 1, but I didn't complete it. So what I'll do today is I'll recap roughly what we've done so far and complete the rest of the Hadith, inshallah ta'ala, as I've intended. Okay. Hadith number 1 in the Matan Arba'in, in the text of the 40 Hadith of Imam Nawawi. Let's just read the text, inshallah ta'ala. Imam Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi says, عن عمير المؤمنين أبي حفص عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى فمن كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله ومن كانت هجرته للدنيا يصيبها أو امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه. And that's reported by Al-Bukhari and Muslim. On the authority of the leader of the believers, the commander of the faithful, Abu Hafs Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, who said, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, actions are by intentions, and every man shall have that which he intended. So he whose migration was for Allah and His Messenger, then his migration was for Allah and His Messenger. But he who migrated to achieve some worldly benefit, or to take some woman in marriage, then his migration was for that for which he migrated, reported by Bukhari and Muslim. 2 weeks ago, we looked at some preliminary basic things about this hadith. Amirul Mu'mineen, why is Umar radiallahu anhu called Amirul Mu'mineen, leader of the believers? Why did he choose that? What does leader of the believers mean in this context with Umar radiallahu anhu? Anybody? If someone's Amirul Mu'mineen, what are they? Inshallah, hopefully trustworthy, although Islamic history has proved that not to be the case always. In charge of what? In charge of the mosque? Leader of the believers, so therefore he's in charge of the ummah. So politically, he's in charge of the ummah, not necessarily religious or spiritual guidance wise, but definitely politically he's in charge of the ummah. In the case of Umar radiallahu anhu and the other 3 rightly guided caliphs, they were not only in charge of the ummah at their time, but they were politically, but they were also the most knowledgeable in terms of religious guidance and iman and knowledge of revelation. Okay, so he's Amir al-Mu'mineen. Why? And normally, what's another term for Amir al-Mu'mineen? What's the kind of another common term for Amir al-Mu'mineen, the political leader of the Muslims? Khalifa, caliph. Why didn't Umar radiallahu anhu call himself Khalifa? Because Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu called himself Khalifa. He said that I'm Khalifa to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I'm the successor of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So why didn't Umar radiallahu anhu continue that thing? MashaAllah, you remembered well, young man. He thought that if he says that I'm Khalifa to Khalifati Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's a bit of an effort to say that. But there was another more important reason. It's true, that's a bit long-winded. Okay, but there's another more important reason that I mentioned. Anybody? He didn't feel that he was worthy to be called the successor of the Prophet in any manner. Abu Bakr, yes. Successor, yes. But me, he says, no, I don't feel comfortable that I could be a successor. Because khalafa, to come after someone. Okay, when the Quran uses the word Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa, talking about Adam alayhi salam, Allah is saying to the angels, indeed I'm going to place upon the earth a khalifa. He's not talking about a political leader. he's talking about one of two things. Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. The word khalifa in the Quran means one of two things. Either it means someone who will uphold the justice of Allah and represent Allah's justice and laws on this earth and live out those laws and encourage others to live out their law. In that case, Khalifa here is like custodian, a caretaker, or a representative of someone. So Adam alayhi salam is Khalifa for that reason, and he's also Khalifa because Adam alayhi salam will be succeeded by his children, and then his children will be succeeded by their children. And this idea of khalafa, khala'if, to be succeeded is another reason why we have this word Khalifa. And you'll find that tafsir in some of the classical books like Al-Baghawi mentions these two things from what I remember. Okay, so, and he's Amir al-Mu'mineen, Abu Hafs. What's this Abu Hafs about then? Abu Hafs is father of? Oh, Hafsa, barakallahu fikum. But the Arabs tend to have a thing that usually, but not always, not rigidly, if they have a daughter as their eldest and they take their kunya, their agnonym, father of, Hafsa, if it's a female, they would more often than not masculinize it. So Abu Hafsa, which is really what he is the father of Hafsa, radiallahu anha, he made it Abu Hafs because it's an Arab thing. Okay, but it doesn't mean that Arabs never had kunyas of Abu Hafsa or Abu Aaliyah or Abu Aisha. They did, but normally it was a masculine name if there was a firstborn female. And why do we say radiyallahu anhu? May Allah be pleased with him. Okay, because in this text, عن أمير المؤمنين أبي حفص عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه قال. So radiyallahu anhu, where's that coming from? I did mention this 2 weeks ago. Radiyallahu anhu, may Allah be pleased with him. It's what is that? When I'm saying to Umar radiyallahu anhu or about Umar radiyallahu anhu or about any Sahabi radiyallahu anhu, what am I doing?
It's the love and respect that Allah has put in our hearts.
Barakallahu fikum. It's a form of love and respect. It's a dua. May Allah be pleased with him, with her, with them. And it comes, in this case, this dua comes from Surah At-Tawbah, the 9th chapter of the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He is well pleased with them, the Sahaba. He is well pleased with them, and they are well pleased with Him. For them He has prepared gardens beneath which rivers to flow, to dwell therein forever. Allah is pleased with them, and they are pleased with Him. Okay? And that's where we get the radiyallahu anhu, anha, anhum. And then he said that the Prophet ﷺ says, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى. Actions are by intentions, and every person will have that which they intended. And I said that really we're talking about voluntary actions, actions that we have control of, as opposed to involuntary action. An example of involuntary action is sneezing, something more common than that, blinking. Right? We don't have an intention to blink, it just happens. Okay, those are called involuntary actions, things that we have no control over. But voluntary actions, then the Prophet says, actions are done by intentions. Voluntary actions always come about through a niyyah, an intention, a resolve in the heart. وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى. And every person will have that which they intended. So if the intention behind an action, and normally we're talking about acts of worship, ibadah, normally, but it doesn't have to be. Normally, the context of this hadith is acts of ibadah. Salah, zakah, hajj, Quran reading, dhikr of Allah, enjoining good, forbidding evil, nasiha, whatever it be of ibadah. Any act of worship which is done with a good intention will be rewarded goodly. Any act of worship which is done with a defective or a bad intention will be not rewarded and will be liable to receive punishment. Okay? So, al-jaza min jins al-amal, the scholars say. Al-jaza min jins al-amal. The recompense, the reward, the recompense. In English, recompense is very neutral. The word reward is normally positive. You don't say, I'm going to reward, you don't say to someone, I'm going to reward you, and then you give them something really bad, like you punch them or you take money off them. Normally when you say you're going to reward someone, it means with something positive. Okay? But the word recompense in English means you could be rewarded good, you could have good reward, or you could have bad. So when the Arabs say al-jaza min jins al-amal, it can be translated as rewards are proportional to deeds, but it's better to say recompense is proportional to deeds. Because if the deed is good, one gets rewarded with good. If the deed is bad, one gets recompensed with bad, with punishment, with Allah's anger. Okay? So if the intention behind an act of worship is good, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept that act inshallah and He will reward it. And if the intention is defective or wrong, okay, then the recompense of that will be a sin and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's punishment. Actions are by intentions, but every person will get that which they intended. So whether it's an Usthadh, a Shaykh, an Alim giving a bayan or a talk or a dars, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى. Intentions must be good. Whether it's people coming to seek knowledge, طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ, their intentions must be good. As we said about 3 weeks ago, before that, one hadith about seeking knowledge. Whoever seeks knowledge, by which is to be sought the face of Allah, but they don't do so, except they don't seek it for that reason, but they seek it only to gain the world and to turn the people's attention towards them, then the fire. Okay? So intentions must be good. Their intentions for praying must be good. We said intention in Arabic, niyya, niyat. Niyya, intention, niyat, as occurs in this hadith, intentions. The Arabs say, the scholars say, niyya is al-qasdu fil qalb. A resolve, a determination in the heart. It is a determination, a resolve in the heart to do something. I resolve to pick up this bag, and then I do it. I don't pick up the bag without a resolve, without a niyya, without an intention. Normally those things that happen without thinking, as I said, are involuntary actions. But voluntary actions, everybody who is here now, resolved to sit down, had an intention to sit down and listen. They may have different reasons for listening, but they all had an intention to sit down, because if you didn't have an intention to sit down, you wouldn't be sitting down. You'd be standing up or you'd be out of the masjid. Actions are by intentions, and every person will have that which they intended. And they say, niyya al-qasdu fil qalb. It's the resolve in the heart. And then they say, when it comes to Sharia-wise, when they define niyya, they say, al-qasdu lil-amal taqarruban ila Allah. It's the resolve to do an action so as to draw closer to Allah. It's the resolve, the determination to do an action in order to draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the niyyah, the intention behind praying the prayer, is in order to draw closer to Allah, to gain His good pleasure, to gain His acceptance. Okay? For the face of Allah. All of these descriptions mean the same thing. Likewise, the intention to study knowledge or teach knowledge, the intention to give charity, all of this must be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ said in the authentic hadith in Sahih Muslim, it's a hadith Qudsi, the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah said, أَنَا أَغْنَى الشُّرَكَاءِ عَنِ الشِّرْكِ. I am so free of needing any partner with me, that whoever does an act for my sake and someone else's sake, I will reject that action for the one to whom he associated partners with me. Allah is so ghani, so free of needing any partner. But whoever does an act of ibadah, prayer for example, and he does it for my sake and for seeking the praises of the people or some kind of reward from people, and he mixes the intention to solely please Allah with pleasing others, I have no need of that action. That action will be rejected by me. Therefore, the idea of making the niyyah, intention purely for Allah, is an obligation. It's a fard. وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. The Quran says, we have commanded them no more than this, than to make religion pure, sincerely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so it's an obligation to have al-qasdu lil-amal taqarruban ila Allah, to make our hearts, the intention of our hearts, directed towards pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all our ibadat, our acts of worship. To not to do so will be the opposite of ikhlas, opposite of sincerity. Does anyone know what the opposite of sincerity is?
Nifaq.
Excellent, you're right. The opposite of sincerity is nifaq, but there is another opposite which applies more here than nifaq. But you are right. Ikhlas, sincerity, has two opposites. One is hypocrisy, nifaq, but there is another one which applies more here. Anybody? Riya. Riya. Showing off. Ostentation. To do an act, ra'a, to be seen. Okay? So ikhlas, you're both right. Ikhlas, the opposite of ikhlas, sincerity, is nifaq, hypocrisy, or riya, showing off. Okay, but in this context, it's riya. And riya is one of the kaba'ir, one of the major sins. In fact, riya, according to Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah ta'ala, and Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah, riya is one of the 4 major spiritual diseases of the heart. And all the other diseases of the heart spring from the 4 diseases. The 4 diseases being riya, showing off, ostentation, kibr, arrogance, pride, hasad, jealousy, envy, and ujub, vanity or self-conceit. These 4 spiritual diseases give rise to every other spiritual disease of the heart. All of these 4 are haram, and they're major sins. Okay? It's far, far worse to have riya, hasad, kibr, ujub in our hearts than, for example, to drink wine. Even though drinking wine is clearly haram. Okay, why? Because one is an amal of the qalb, an action of the heart, which will corrupt nearly every other action, and drinking wine will just corrupt that one little time that you drank it, and God forbid someone drinks wine, they might break a window or something like that, cause some silly nuisance. But it's a contained thing. But the diseases of the heart, as a rule of thumb, the diseases of the heart tend to be worse than the diseases of the limbs. Disobedience with the heart tends to be worse than disobedience with the limbs. Okay? And yet, alhamdulillah, we do pay attention to not drinking wine and those other outward prohibitions. Alhamdulillah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep that alive in the ummah and in our hearts. But look, how little attention do we pay towards the diseases of the heart? I don't even know I've got these diseases. That's how unaware we are. That's how inattentive and how heedless we have become. Even though the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even though the Quran says about the heart, يوم لا ينفع مال ولا بنون إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. يوم لا ينفع مال ولا بنون إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. That day when neither wealth nor children will benefit anyone except he who comes to Allah with a heart that is sound and clean. That day, the day of judgment, what counts is qalbun salim, clear, clean and pure, purified heart. And the Prophet ﷺ said, and we'll come to this in hadith number 5 or 6, إِنَّ فِي الْجَسَدِ مُضْغَةً إِذَا صَلَحَتْ صَلَحَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ وَإِذَا فَسَدَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبُ. Indeed, there's a piece of flesh in the body. Or if this piece of flesh be sound, all of the body is sound. If this piece of flesh be diseased, all of the body is diseased. أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبُ. Indeed, that piece of flesh is the heart. So if the heart has all of these diseases, kibr, ujub, riya, hasad, jealousy, showing off, arrogance, vanity, self-conceit, then the actions are going to reflect that. The action will be actions of arrogance, actions of showing off, so on and so forth. And that's why one of the greatest deceptions, one of the greatest talbisat that Iblis has thrown upon us today, even amongst practicing people, is that he makes us, yes, okay, if ideally he doesn't want us to be concerned with religion at all, or ibadah at all, and that's his greatest goal. But if someone becomes concerned with ibadah, with worship, and with deen, with practicing, and with obedience to Allah, then the next thing is, if I can't stop him doing the outward action, let me stop him doing the inward actions of ibadah. Let me stop him concentrating on the heart. And so today, you'll see many young men and women, we have that outward thing, but inside, it's all dirt, filth, black, dark, because we're not concentrating on this. And Imam Nawawis starts this, as Imam Bukhari does, inside of Bukhari, with إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Action by intention. Every person will have that which they intended. It's his way, it's the process of telling us, make your intention for your actions correct, because the reward and the punishment will depend upon it, because us getting closer to Allah or further away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will depend upon the niyyah. One more thing. When we said that the niyyah is al-qasd lil-amal taqarruban ila Allah, it's our intention to draw closer to Allah. Our scholars, and when I say our scholars, I'm not talking about just today's scholars. There's some people who, they're just obsessed with just today's scholars, and you'll find that they have big gaps in scholarship. What I mean by that is, some people have got a funny Islam. They've got a strange Islam, and this strange Islam is this. They believe that in the time of the Sahaba and the early Muslims, Islam was good and sound. Which we all have to believe, inshallah. And if you don't know why, then I'll explain it some time. And then they say, then after that, Islam not only went on a downhill, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years passed without having any proper serious scholars. And then round about the 7th, 8th century, one or two scholars in Syria, okay, 700 years ago, one or two scholars got the real Islam again. And then after that, after they passed away, hundreds of years and whatever, and about 100-200 years ago again, some people got the real Islam again, and alhamdulillah, we've got that real Islam now. So actually, barring the first 200 years of early Islam, barring 50, 80 years in this Damascus period with one or two or three scholars, barring 200 years, that's 200 there, 100 there, 200 there. That's 500 years out of 1400 years. It's saying 900 years, Islam was dodgy. The truth was kind of, nobody really knew it properly. But alhamdulillah, my sheikh, he's got the real Islam. Right? And yet the Prophet, look at this myth, look at this ajib thing. Yet the Prophet says, this ummah will never unite upon misguidance. La yajtami'u ummati ala dalal. My ummah will never unite upon misguidance. Meaning in every generation, there will be people upon the haqq. There will be no generation that won't be devoid of haqq, whether you and I know that. But there will be some people. What else? The Prophet said, this knowledge, يَحْمِلُ هَذَا الْعِلْمِ. This knowledge will be carried or transmitted by the trustworthy ones of every generation. And they will remove from the knowledge the false interpretation of the ignorance, the extremism of the extremists, and the misguidance of the misguided. This knowledge will be carried or transmitted by the trustworthy ones of every generation. Ajib. And yet we're being told that 800-900 years, 1,000 years of 1,400 year tradition, we've had misguidance everywhere. And the Prophet said about these udul, these trustworthy ones, he said, لا تزال طائفة من أمتي ظاهرين على الحق. These righteous people, they'll be ظاهرون على الحق. They'll be known in society. There might not be many of them, but they will be known in every generation. And that's why you find, if I'm upon that myth, that fairy story of, oh, there's only been these little periods of true guidance, one of the proofs is, I will be able to quote lots of scholars in the early times, from the Sahaba, the Tabi'un, the Tabi'un, the Salaf. Then you'll find, oh, that's funny, Abu Ali has a big jump. Because the next set of scholars he's focusing on is in the 7th century of Islam, or the 8th century of Islam. And then Abu Ali has another jump of 400 or 500 years, and then he's quoting scholars only today, or maybe 100 years ago. If you see someone who has that, I mean, he may be ignorant, but we're assuming he's a talib al-ilm, an alim, an Usthadh of some level. If you see someone like that, know that there is some level of misguidance amongst them. Because if they believe the knowledge hasn't been transmitted, and only a few people here like that, with big gaps in they're denying the hadiths. And they're denying, إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. Isn't that what the Quran says? Indeed, we have revealed the reminder, the dhikr, the Quran, by extension the Sunnah. وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. And it's for us to preserve and protect it. Allah will preserve this deen for us. He'll make the hifz of this deen, and He does it through the rijal, through the men and women, the ulama, who are rightly guided. Al-ulama warathatul anbiya. The Prophet said the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. Okay. Yes, individual scholars, they can have ignorance, they can make mistakes. They will have some knowledge that another scholar may not have, and the other scholar will have some knowledge that the first scholar may not. That's true. But as a whole, as a jama'ah, as a collective, as Imam Ash-Shafi rahmatullahi alayhi says in his Risala, if you took every scholar of each generation, every scholar, suppose you could do that, you will never find anything of the Sharia or the Sunnah or the Arabic language missing. But if you take individual scholars, they will know something of the Sunnah and miss out something else. They will know something of the language and miss out something else. But you take all of them as a jama'ah, لا يجتمع أمتي على الضلال. My nation, meaning the scholars of my nation, will not unite upon His guidance. Okay? Anyway, the scholars about niyyah, they all agree. Niyyah is al-qasdu fil qalb. It's in the heart, and they all agree on this. It's an amal of the qalb. It's an action of the heart. Then they differ. Can there be talaffuz? Can the niyyah be verbalized? For example, oh Allah, I'm praying 4 rakah, Isha prayer, behind the Imam. Something like that, for your sake, to draw closer to you. Can the niyyah be verbalized? It's clear, all of the scholars agree, niyyah is an action of the heart. There's no difference about that, and it's there even in the English. In the English, we know that intention is an action of the heart, not of the limbs. But they differ. Can it be verbalized? One group of scholars, a very small group of scholars, Ibn Qudama, rahmatullahi alayhi, Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, says, no, it shouldn't be verbalized, because we didn't see the early Muslims do this. We didn't see the Prophet and the early Muslims do this. The other opinion is that actually it is sunnah to verbalize it. It is recommended, mustahab or sunnah, to verbalize. So it is recommended before you start the prayer to not only have the niyyah in your heart, but to say it on your tongue. So you have one that says, no, it mustn't be, and the other group that says, which is a large group of people, a large group of scholars says, yes, it is recommended to verbalize. But inshallah ta'ala, and Allah knows best, what the right position is that if it needs to be verbalized, because I can't get it right in my heart at the moment, and by helping me say it out loud, then I can have hudur al-qalb, I can make my heart present and focused, then alhamdulillah, it's an aid. Otherwise, it's sufficient to have it in the heart, because a niyyah is qasdu fil qalb. And they all agree. If I say, pretend that this is 7:30 now, and I just came into the masjid, and I said, with my tongue, I said, Ya Allah, I'm praying 4 rakah. I know why I've come here, and I've come here for 7:30, intentionally. Ya Allah, I'm praying behind the Imam 4 rakah for dhuhr. Allahu Akbar. But in my heart, I knew it was Isha. Then Allah will count the Isha, my intention for Isha, not the mistake I made with my tongue. Meaning, the tongue's verbalization of the niyyah isn't the issue. The issue is the heart. Okay? There's a difference of opinion, so inshallah, I can only teach what the position that I hold, or that many scholars hold, but I just wanted to give you the other two, so that if you follow that one, or even if you follow that one, then alhamdulillah, we don't need to fight about it. Just know that there is a legitimate difference of opinion. These are qualified scholars. Ibn Qudama, very qualified scholar. And all the rest within the Sunni madhabs, you'll have from Shafis and Malikis and Hanfis and Hanbalis who will say, talaffuz bin niyyah is mustahab or sunnah. Okay? But there is the position which is, it's sufficient in the heart, but if you need to have hudur al-qalb, you come rushing into the masjid and it's like, it's like it's winter, let's say, and the prayers are so close together, so, right, is this dhuhr or is this asr? You know, like, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, I'm just going to pray for a asr for you, Ya Allah. Just to help me remember it's asr. Then this is niyyah is of two types. There's niyyatul amal, niyyatul ma'mul. Niyyatul amal is the intention of the act. Niyyatul amal. And niyyatul ma'mul is the intention of who the act is intended for. Intention of the act itself and who the action is intended for. Niyyatul amal is what we discuss in books of fiqh. So in the books of fiqh, we will always talk about niyyah. You have to have a niyyah for prayer. Why? Not only for who it is, but to tell you what prayer it is. To distinguish the niyyah of the prayer of dhahr from the prayer of asr. To distinguish the fard prayer from the sunnah prayer. The sunnah prayer from the nafil prayer. To distinguish, let's just say I like to diet a lot and I don't like to eat. And in winter, even in the whole daytime, I don't eat anything. To distinguish my normal habit of dieting from the actual habit of not eating due to Ramadan. Okay? I have to have a niyyah for the fasting. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Okay? I can't just think, all right, I've not eaten and now it's nearly 2 minutes to Maghrib and I haven't even eaten since before Fajr. Oh, this is my fasting. It's not acceptable. So distinguishing going hungry, dieting from, say, fasting. Okay? So this niyyatul amal is an obligation for us to do. But niyyatul ma'mul is what you discuss in books of tazkiyah and suluk and tasawwuf and ihsan on spirituality and purifying the heart. Okay? And niyyatul ma'mul is who the action is intended for. And this is where ikhlas comes in. Sincerity. Now it's really difficult because, when you say sincerity or even ikhlas in Arabic, I mean, the good thing about Arabic is you still can bring down an Arabic word to its root and it gives you an idea. So for example, salah, like namaz they say in Urdu, right? Salah, okay? Salah actually means a supplication, a dua. But salah here, inna salata kanat al-mu'minina kitab al-mawquta, this salah 5 times a day is a particular type of dua that involves bowing and prostration. But you can see the connection. Jihad means striving and a struggle, and then there are different types of striving and struggle, Sharia-wise. But you can see each striving and struggle, okay, each jihad, is linked to some level of, some type of striving and struggle. So you can see the kind of root word in Arabic. But if you say sincerity in English, what's the root word in English? I don't know. Is it a French word? Is it a Latin word? Is it a Greek word? Where did it come from? We don't know. So it's sometimes when we learn in English, we say sincerity, you have to be sincere. It's not always clear what that means. In Arabic they say, or that some of our scholars have said, Ikhlas, ikhrajul khalq an mu'amalatil haqq. Ikhrajul khalq an mu'amalatil haqq. Ikhlas is, sincerity is to, in our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is to rid our relationship with Allah of the concerns of people about us. What are people thinking if I pray? They'll say, mashallah, Abu Ali's a wali. If I come here and I study, attend a circle, then that elderly man whose daughter I want to marry, he'll be really impressed with me. Then when I go to his house to ask for the daughter, he'll say, oh, mashallah, young man, he came to the masjid, talib al-ilm, mashallah, la quwwata illa billah, jayyid jiddan. So it really wasn't for the ilm, it was for lidunya. Okay, it was for a worldly end. Or just as Muhajir Qais. Ibn Mas'ud, the Radhan says, and narrations in the Mu'jam of Tabarani. Ibn Mas'ud said there was a man amongst us who wanted to marry a woman, and her name was Qais. And she said to him, I won't marry you unless you make hijrah with me, migrate from Makkah to Medina. So the man migrated from Makkah to Medina to marry Qais, and Ibn Mas'ud said from that day on we called him Muhajir Qais, the man who migrated for Qais. Now some scholars say that is the reason, the sabab al-wurud, the reason behind this hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. But Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, a famous commentator of Sahih Bukhari, says even though the hadith is sahih and the story is true, But there's no proof in the story to say that that's the reason why the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. And then he went on to give the example, whoever migrates for Allah and His Messenger, migrate for Allah and His Messenger. And whoever migrates for a worldly reason or to marry some woman, then his migration is for that which he intended. Even though it does fit the incident, but we're not going to link the two together necessarily, according to one of the two sound sayings of the scholars. So, ikhlas is ikhrajul khalq and mu'amalat al-haq. In my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm trying not to care about what others think about me, say about me, whether they're saying good things or bad things. Why? Because I'm not doing the prayer for them, I'm not doing the ibadah for them. What I'm concerned about and what I care about is what does Allah say and think about me. Another definition of ikhlas, I say ikhlas, ifradul ma'bud or ifradullah fi ta'atihi bil qasd. It is in our worship of Allah to intend, to solely intend Allah as our object of worship. I'm not praying to please the people. I'm not fasting so a person will pat me on the back. I'm not doing this, such and such, so that some president can give me a big house. So doing it taqarrubun ila Allah, to draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They also say ikhlas, al-ikhlas ghaybatul khalq عن غير رب. غيبة الخلق عن غير رب. Sorry, غيبة القلب عن غير رب. It is to empty the heart of everything other than Allah. When we have these kind of ideas in our mind, in our heart, ikhlas is emptying the heart of everything other than Allah. Ikhlas is focusing on Allah in our ibadah, to the exclusion of everyone else. Ikhlas is not being concerned about what people say or don't say, but it's focused on what Allah will say and drawing closer. When we have that, we have the idea of ikhlas in our heart. It makes it clearer what ikhlas is about. And then they say, how to nurture ikhlas? Well, ikhlas, or lack of ikhlas, very much comes down to how I view people. If I am so concerned about people, what they will think of me and what they won't think, it's very difficult for me to pray, very difficult for me to wear a hijab, very difficult for me to grow a beard, because what will people say? And most people aren't interested in a young man growing a beard or a woman wearing a hijab. Most people aren't even interested in people praying to God, to Allah. So if I'm concerned about them, or if I fear them in a way that I should only fear Allah, oh, but they'll be angry with me, and then they will talk badly about me, or they will take away my wages, and I have that fear, then know that no human being, neither a prophet nor someone so less than has any ability, وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. Isn't that right? There is no power nor might except in Allah. Allah is Ad-Dar and An-Nafi'. He is the one who gives benefit, He is the one who brings harm. No one else has that ability. A human being can only benefit me in as much as Allah allows that human being to benefit me. And a human being can only harm me in as much as Allah allows that human being to harm me. And if Allah wishes me to not be harmed, if the whole of creation were to gather together to harm me, and Allah didn't decree it, they couldn't harm me. When we have that kind of tasawwur, that kind of conceptualization in our hearts about creation, in our minds about creation, ikhlas bi'idhnillah becomes easier. Why? Because now I'm not doing a class to show off, to get the praises of people. Because what's the praises of people? Today they praise you, tomorrow they curse you. Isn't that it? The nature of people? We're fickle. We're really, oh yeah, greatest scholar in the world, mashallah, he's like, mashallah, he's one daraja short of Jibreel alayhi salam. He's such a big scholar, Shaykh al-Islam, alim al-dunya wal-akhirah, And then he gives you a fatwa, or he says one thing, okay, in a book or in a fatwa that you disagree with. A'udhu billah, khabith, jahl jiddan, and then you're cursing him. Whoa! This is human beings like that. Okay? And you see that, if you take that just from a dunya point of view, not Muslims, you see in the newspapers all the time. Today, this celebrity is up there. This is the celebrity. And in the same newspaper, the next week, will tell you how rubbish this celebrity is and how you should be cursing them silly. It's not just non-Muslims like that. We're all like that. We're all like that to some degree or the other. Don't go for it. Whether I get praised or not, the first question you ask is Allah pleased with me? Is Allah pleased with me? And actually, if anything, that is the only concern we should have. It's not that I want to worship Allah in a way that makes people displeased with me. Okay? So we're not going to go out on the streets and pray in the middle of Canmore Road. Zebra crossing there, that's like a sajjada, a Janazah prayer mat. Black, white, we just did Allah like that. 58 bus warning, passengers cursing and whatever. We don't but ikhlas to Allah. No, we don't purposely go out to push people away, but if people are unhappy with our tawheed, bi'idhnillah, our iman, our mahabba of Allah, and our khawf and fear, hope and raja of Allah, but then we can't do anything. We can smile a little bit more, we can be a little more gentler, okay? We can try to win them over as the Prophet did, shay'un fa shay'un, or bit by bit, daraja by daraja. But in the end, if some hearts are so hard that even if you mention Allah, they become angry inside, there's very little you can do. But it is true, we should not practice Islam in a way that purposely, intentionally, pushes anyone away. Okay, so one way is to recognize that people cannot harm or benefit us except as Allah wills. Therefore focus on Allah. Another way of nurturing ikhlas is that remember Allah is constantly watching us. And not only does the divine gaze, not only does Allah see our bodies, our ajsam, but He sees our intentions and our thoughts and our asrar, our secrets too. I can trick you and make you believe that I'm doing something really good for Allah outwardly, ala zahir, but Allah knows my batin. When I recall that Allah sees my outward and my inward, He knows my outward and my inward, He hears my outward and my inward, then what's the point in trying to gain the praises of the people and have riyah and show off? Okay, and show off in front of people in an act of worship. Okay? And sometimes shaitan can be very subtle. The obvious tricks of shaitan is that he'll make us show off automatically. Okay, that's clear. So the man, I want to give some money to the masjid, but I could give it now, but nobody will know. Okay? I could give it now, the box is there somewhere, but nobody will know. So I wait until the Jama'ah prayer. Not the Fajr, because no one will be there after. I'll wait until the Maghrib prayer, let's just say. And there are lots of people there. And then I'll say, Mr. President, where is the money box for the masjid, the Lillah box? Because I want to give £100. You didn't hear me? I want to give £100. And then when you say, brother, but you don't have to, no, but you know, he's a bit deaf, so I have to speak loudly. No, my intention was that as many people hearing me as possible, so they know, but Aaliyah, he gives charity money, and look how generous he is. Okay? And then I go out the masjid, all happy with myself. But Allah doesn't accept that because it's showing off. But there are subtler ways. There are subtler ways. These are obvious ways, yeah? But there are subtler ways. So a man prayed, tahajjud prayer, let's say last night. Nobody knew, just him and Allah. Not even his wife knew maybe. Silently made wudu, got out, prayed 2 rakah. And let's also say, his niyyah was good. In the beginning, it was good. Alhamdulillah. But shaitan doesn't say, I failed to corrupt his intention, I will leave him now. Shaitan will think, okay, so he's prayed it. Let me think, how can I corrupt it? Hours have gone. Hours have gone by. Shaitan is still thinking, how can I harm this man? Because he is uduwwun mubin. He is a clear enemy to us. And an enemy does not rest against its opponent. If it cannot harm them in one way, it will start thinking and planning another way. So Shaitan is thinking and planning. And he whispers in his heart, why don't you just tell somebody, just one person, that you pray tahajjud, night prayer? And what's the harm? But no, ikhlas. But Shaitan's whispering in me. And then finally, after maybe it's like 15 hours have gone by, it's in the middle of the day, but he's whispering in my ear all the time, and khalas, he's got me and I didn't realize it. Then I say, oh brother, subhanAllah, 4:15 in the morning, last night it was really cold. And it's really funny because there was this star, it was like flickering like that, and I thought it was like a spaceship. And then, why am I telling him this? Not to just describe the night. I'm hoping he'll say, oh Abu Ali, what were you doing up at 4:15 in the morning? And I said, oh, I was just doing my tahajjud, I don't like telling people. What I'm trying to say is our Salaf used to say they used to fear the sincerity behind their action more than the action itself. Doing the action is easier than having sincerity in the action. So we shouldn't take it lightly. We should put all our energies in this. One more thing before I finish it. I mentioned last time, that we're talking about ibadah, prayer and fasting and hajj needs an intention. But even mundane matters, dunya matters, eating, drinking, sleeping. If I have an intention, a niyyah, that Allah, my eating, my drinking, my sleeping, I want to do that to draw close to you for your sake, for your love, for your obedience. Eating, drinking, which we are going to do anyway, then that action, that mundane dunya action, becomes an act of ibadah. Not dhatiyan li ghayrihi. It becomes due to the intention. Whereas salah prayer is an act of worship in itself, whether we pray it rightly or wrongly. But eating is not necessarily an act of worship. But if we have the right intention, then that act of eating can be an act of drawing closer to Allah, for which we can be rewarded for. Our sleeping, Ya Allah, I want to sleep so that I can refresh my body, so that in the morning I can get up and worship you stronger and do the halal work stronger, and the act becomes an act of worship. If a mother has this niyyah that I wish to have children so that I can raise them in the obedience and in the shukr and in the loving gratitude of you, Ya Rabbul Alameen. And she has that niyyah and she has children. For every second of the day that she is a mother, Allah is rewarding her for her intentions, even if in the end the children aren't righteous, provided she did her best. Because the outcome is not in her hand, but the intention and the good actions were. So she was trying to teach them Quran, she was trying to instill in their hearts love of Allah and love of the Prophet ﷺ, and obedience and Sharia, but it didn't work for whatever reason. For every second of the day, the mother, in all of her motherhood life, is getting rewarded. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. The books of fiqh say, from the Hanafi fiqh books to the Hanbali fiqh books, even if the details may differ a little bit. One who comes into, and they differ, one who comes into a Jamia masjid or any masjid. So if I know it from the Hanbali fiqh, so if the Hanafi fiqh is slightly different, then compensate if that's the school that you follow. But whoever walks into a masjid with the niyyah of i'tikaf, even if it's for a second or a minute, gets rewarded for 1 minute or 1 second of i'tikaf, which is better than walking into the masjid without the niyyah. Of course, walking into a masjid won't get rewarded and sitting down. But if you add to that, I want to do it with for i'tikaf, to be devoted to you and to try to detach myself away from the dunya and unnecessary speech as much as possible, one gets rewarded for i'tikaf according to all 4 schools of Sunni Islam. And look, I'm still walking into the masjid, I'm still eating, I'm still drinking, I'm still sleeping. And the Prophet said, in the authentic Hadith Bukhari, even when one of you goes to his wife in a halal way, they will get rewarded. And they said, Ya Rasulullah, will we get rewarded even for this? He said, if one of you went to a woman in a haram way, will you not be punished? They said, yes. So, what happens if you go to a woman in a halal way? Will you not be rewarded? And he qiyas. The Prophet is teaching them, okay, Imam Qayyim says in the I'lam, he's teaching them some of them, the rules of qiyas, comparing one thing with another, coming out with a new ruling, based upon the commonality, the illah. Okay, subhanAllah. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Okay, إِفْرَادُ اللَّهِ فِي طَاعَتِهِ بِالْقَصْدِ. إِخْرَاجُ الْخَلْقِ عَنْ مُعَامَلَةِ الْحَقِّ. Not to be concerned about what people say in our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we could only do that, we would find that our actions will be accepted by Allah, our lives will truly be blessed, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will draw us closer to Him and give us a daraja with Him. Okay? And this is something I ask that Allah gives me the tawfiq for, that He gives you all the tawfiq for, because really this is the asr, the foundations of our ibadah and our mu'amala, our transaction with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. And this is why Abdul Rahman ibn Mahdi rahmatullah alayh said to Imam al-Bukhari as one of his teachers that I wish that you would write a book, and that when you write a book on hadith, that you would start with this hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, just so that your intention will be correct. And since the day that Abdul Rahman ibn Mahdi said that, rahimahullah, and the day that al-Bukhari actually made a compilation with this, it's become the way of the ulama many a time to start with this, either writing it properly or at least verbalizing it, having the right intention, because it's an act of worship to write a book and compile a hadith book, write a book on fiqh. Abdullah ibn Mubarak said to end it, rahimahullah, he said, how many a big action is destroyed because of defective intention, and how many a small action is elevated because of sound intention. Allah Jalla wa Ala is very merciful, because He's not asking us anything of physical strength or intellectual big learning, going to a university or a Darul Ulum. Just niyyah. Have one or two understandings about niyyah and ask Allah the tawfiq to tune the heart a little bit to Him. In the old days, and some of you youngsters might not have seen it, okay, unless you want to go to a museum, we used to have these radios, and you have to tune in the radio. You can't press a button and it goes straight to the station, some digital radio. You had to do that with the TV at one time as well, right? Okay, you tune in the radio so that it picks up the signal, right? That's what we need to be doing in our heart. Tune in, and then you get the heaven signal, right? And then, if you move around through the day and forget, it gets out of tune. Spend a little bit of time during the day to retune, inshallah. We remind each other of what Aaliyah have been retuned. Prayer is a reminder to retune. Okay? Our ulama and those of the awliya that remain, they remind us to tune. Because it's all about tuning the heart to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there is no life without the heart trying to be tuned and being tuned. We ask Allah Jalla wa Ala, He gives us tuned hearts. Qalbun salim, subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun ala mursalin, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. I lost track of time. Alright, okay, mashallah, I actually wanted to finish. Any questions, mashallah? Alhamdulillah. Any questions on إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ?
Can I say another meaning?
Absolutely.
Just to share the knowledge. Because in Arabic language, when sometimes you repeat something, that will indicate the importance of it.
So.
Like what Prophet Muhammad said in Hadith, فَمَنْ هَاجَرَ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ وَمَنْ هَاجَرَ إِلَى دُنْيَا يُصِيبُهَا أَوْ امْرَأَةٍ يَنكِحُهَا فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى مَا هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِ. So in the first part of it, he repeated what he said.
Exactly.
In the first instance. So من هاجر إلى الله فمن كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله. Just to tell us that how important it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Why? On the second half, ومن كانت هجرته إلى دنيا يصيبها أو امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه.
He didn't repeat it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because because it's not
of significance. Absolutely, absolutely. To the brother. There are so many fawaid, spiritual benefits, in these 40 hadiths. So, for example, just at home, I have about 14 commentaries, about 3 of which I study with teachers, and many of which I've read myself. But whether it's Al-Haythami's Fathul Mubin on the Shara al-Rayn, whether it's Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali's Jami' al-Ulum al-Hikam, there are so many benefits there. The brother just mentioned one, that there is a way, a style, in the Arabic language and in the prophetic Arabic language, that kind of tells you what is significant and what is less significant, or what is insignificant. And the point the brother's making is, look how the Prophet said, whoever migrated for Allah and His Messenger, migrated for Allah and His Messenger. He could have said, whoever migrated for Allah and His Messenger, migrated for that reason. But he didn't. He repeats, Allah and His Messenger. Whoever migrates for some worldly reason, or to take some woman's hand in marriage. He didn't say, migrated for some worldly reason, or to take some woman's hand in marriage, which is what he's done above. He says, migrated. His migration is for that which he migrated for. So he repeats, whoever migrated for Allah and His Messenger, migrated for Allah and His Messenger, because that is the thing. And the dunya bit, it could be important, but it's nowhere near as important. And even as I said 2 weeks ago, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَىٰ, how we explained it today, there are another 3 different interpretations of how you can explain that. But I said I didn't want to get into the ikhtilafat, but we could come away with something practical. Imam Shatibi, one of the Maliki scholars of 8th century Islam, and he's famous for a book on Usul al-Fiqh and Maqasid, he says, according to this hadith, when the Prophet was saying, Allahumma inni as'aluka ilmun nafi'a, oh Allah, grant me knowledge which is beneficial, and I seek refuge in you from knowledge which is not beneficial. Imam Shatibi rahimahullah says, ilmun nafi', beneficial knowledge, is knowledge that either benefits the heart, or the actions, or both. So, at the end of every majlis, every gathering, I hope bi'idhnillah, that either our heart has some action, it loved Allah more, feared Allah more, relied upon Allah more, hoped in Allah's forgiveness and mercy more, was in awe of Allah, ta'zeem of Allah Jalla wa Jalaluhu, or something like that, some action. Or it loved it was merciful to Allah's creation more. It was kinder to Allah's creation more. Even that is an amal of the qalb. Or it was praying more, fasting more, repenting from sins, lowering the gaze, helping the parents, commanding the good, forbidding the some amal of the thing. If in our learning we come away with neither that nor that, then either the teacher is at fault, or the heart of the listener is at fault, or both. So we ask Allah Jalla wa Ala that He makes these things of benefit to us, inshallah.
My question is for the previous lecture. You mentioned about Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asking Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to make one of 2 Umar to be Muslim.
Yeah.
And the same Prophet said that charity begins at home. So why he didn't ask for to be Muslim, like the history tells us Abu Talib died when he wasn't a Muslim. So why he didn't ask for his beloved uncle, Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, to be Muslim?
Just in case the sister's upstairs, the question was last time I said that in doing the biography of Umar that he made the Prophet made a dua that, oh Allah, bring one of the 2 Umars to Islam, either Ibn al-Khattab or Abu Lahab, Umar ibn someone who I can't remember, Umar ibn Hashim, I can't remember his name. And Umar ibn al-Khattab is the one who became a Muslim. So the brother is asking, so since charity begins at home and the dawah begins at home, why didn't the Prophet make dua for his beloved uncle Abu Talib to be a Muslim? Rather he's asked for Umar ibn al-Khattab, which is no family connection. Abu Lahab is his uncle. So that makes sense. Why? Actually you will find, if you cast your mind back to the seerah, that the Prophet made a lot of dua for Abu Talib to be Muslim, and he kept on giving, kept on inviting him to the deen, perhaps more than any other person, so much so even on the deathbed. he invited Abu Talib to the deen, and he was so eager for Abu Talib to be a Muslim. There is a verse in the Quran which the Jumhur, the majority of the Mufassirun, the majority of the Quranic commentators say this is in reference to Abu Talib, and the verse is إنك بارك الله فيكم إنك لا تهدي من أحب ولكن الله يهدي من يشاء بارك الله فيكم. Indeed, you cannot guide those whom you love, but Allah guides whomsoever He pleases. And this, you cannot guide those whom you love, is a reference to the Prophet's natural love, حب طبعي, of his beloved uncle, who was a man of beautiful character, beautiful actions, but he had kufr. Okay, which spoiled everything. So he was making dua, absolutely.
I mean, we didn't have any, we didn't get any reference except like that kind, because this is a big issue when he asked about
yeah, so it's,
Umar radiallahu anhu to be a Muslim.
we have no doubt.
Kind of.
I understand you're saying. We have no doubt, my brother, that the prophetic concern for his uncle was greater than for those two. And even if we don't have a statement like that, but we have so much indication, either in the Quran or through the Seerah, that his plea and his desire and his niyyah for was making these du'as, that it doesn't come in this particular Seerah, this particular form, is not an issue at all. It's not an issue at all.
Even to the extent where it says the Prophet ﷺ's uncle is going to be given a lesser punishment in the hellfire because of the dua he made, and you can probably elaborate on the punishment that he's going to receive.
Yeah,
that his ankles will be in the fire,
that's right,
up until the point where his brain will boil. But that's the lowest form of punishment in the hellfire. So he did do a lot of dua for his uncle.
Yeah. So much
so that even though he's got the least degree, that's the punishment he's going to get.
But inshallah, we'll move away from the Abu Talib incident. Why? Because he didn't speak about it much thereafter, and because it's a mu'amala of the Prophet and someone that he loved dearly, and we don't really want to open an unnecessary wound just out of adab. If we don't feel the pain, but just out of adab, even though everything that he said is halal to be said, but sometimes just not saying some things from Imam adab is nice, inshallah.
I'd like to ask you about Aaliyah. You told that Aaliyah is something which you want to be close to the Lord. But if your intention is to be close to do some evil things, what is the consequences? How it?
Well, here there's good news and bad news. Right? There's good news and bad news. Actions by intentions, and everyone will get that which they intended. Someone who intended good will get rewarded for good. Someone who intended bad will get rewarded for bad. But look at another hadith. The Prophet said, whoever intends a good action, and then carries out that good action, Allah will give him 10 to 700 times the reward for that deed. Whoever intends good, but was unable to carry out the action, he will still get rewarded for that action. Whoever intends bad, but restrains himself from doing bad, he still gets rewarded with a good reward. Whoever intends bad and carries out that bad, he gets one bad reward, one bad recompense. So out of the 4 possibilities, the first one is 10 to 700 times, and the second one is one good deed, the third one is one good deed, it's only the 4th one. So justice demands this, but the divine justice has been covered and tempered with great mercy and great fadl, great gifts, such that out of the 4 cases, only in one of them could you really come out bad. And that is different than, I want to rob a bank, I planned everything to rob a bank, okay? This, by the way, in case anyone else is listening, this is just an example, no one is doing that. And I want to rob a bank, and then I just go down with my little group, right, with my mask and everything like that, to the local Barclays, and I didn't realise that today it's the police are all banking their checks today. So there's about 20 policemen in the thing. I think, oh, I better go home instead and watch some TV. In that case, no, I intended to do a bad deed, but I didn't restrain myself from, taqwa, fear of Allah, or something like that. It was that I just couldn't do it because the circumstance didn't allow. That's not the case of restraining myself, which is what the hadith is talking about. Allah sorry, let's just take that brother here. Sorry, Brother Shafi.
I was going to say, you mentioned 4 of the diseases of the heart. You said showing off, arrogance, jealousy, and envy. And the last one was vanity or self-conceit. So I wanted you to just elaborate on the vanity and self-conceit, just for the younger brothers that are here today as well.
Right, okay. The ujub, which I've translated here as vanity or self-conceit. Ujub is from ajaba, when a person's amazed with themselves, is just so overly impressed with themselves, forgetting that any good that they've done is from Allah anyway. So ujub will be, for example, that could be one. I was thinking of more of an ibadah, but that would be something, ujub is, because in English that's how we would say with vanity and conceit is like, I'm just so, wow, alhamdulillah that Allah created mirrors, because then the mirror has the fortune of me looking into it. I'm so handsome. Right? This is just ugly vanity, right? You can get that in ibadah as well. That, well, brother, do you know more than me in knowledge? So, and I'm so impressed with myself. But who gave you the knowledge? And is it knowledge that counts or actions? Okay. So someone who may have a lesser knowledge, but he knows his fara'id. And someone who has great, but the person with lesser knowledge, who knows his fara'id, then he's fulfilling them. And the one who has greater knowledge, but he doesn't do all the fara'id obligations, or he does them in defective ways with bad intention, whatever. In the end, what? But here I am, I'm impressed with my knowledge. And there were people in the Quran who we're told were impressed with knowledge. Iblis is probably the best example. I mean, it's unlikely when it comes to factual knowledge of Allah, zahir knowledge of Allah, there's not going to be there's not going to be hardly anyone here in this age who's going to have that kind of knowledge. But he just didn't have the adab or the ikhlas and everything else that needs to go along with it. So this is something which is really problematic in us. And also it happens more to religious people. Because as an asl, as a rule, the one who prays is better than the one who doesn't pray. As a rule, as a theory. The one who fasts is better than the one who wears hijab is better than the one who doesn't wear hijab. But that's hukum am. That's a general rule. But now you put hukum mu'ayyin. And you get someone who, she's not wearing hijab. She's 20 years old, let's just say she's not wearing, a Muslim, she's not wearing hijab. She believes she should wear, but she's not wearing hijab. And then there's his sister, she is wearing hijab. We've just said, the theory, the one who wears hijab is better than the one who doesn't wear hijab. But now we take a sister, Ruqayya, and sister Sumayya, okay? Ruqayya doesn't wear hijab, Sumayya does wear hijab. But I can't bring that rule just like that on these two specific people. We're specifics now. Why? Because maybe Ruqayya doesn't wear hijab. She wants to, but she knows she's sinning. But mashallah, Ruqayya is praying and fasting, and she's very obedient to her parents. Of course, when she goes outside, she's a bit of a fitna to men because, let's say, Ruqayya is quite pretty or whatever. But she's doing these other good deeds. Let's say Sumayya is wearing hijab, but now and again, she misses some prayers. Sometimes she prays, sometimes she misses her prayers. She's always disobedient to her parents, swearing at them, cursing them, or whatever. In the scales and the mizan of the Sharia, Ruqayya has one bad deed, not wearing hijab. But she has all of these big hasanat. 5 prayers, obedience of parents. And Sumayya has definitely the hasanat of hijab, but she has these really big bad deeds, which are worse than not wearing hijab. But look at the theory. The theory is, as a rule, the one who wears hijab is better than the one who... But when you come down to real actions, therefore, we can say, Islam is the best, and we can boast about Islam. We can boast about Islam, but to boast about myself as a Muslim, not permissible. not permissible. Because religious people, not just Muslims, anybody, you can have Christian, you can have Sikh, a Jew, a Rastafari. When you're religious and you're practicing something that your other co-religious isn't, you think, he's not as good as me. But we forget, مَا أَصَابَكُم مِّنْ حَسَنَةٍ فَمِنَ اللَّهِ. Whatever good comes to you, it's from Allah. It's not from me. وَمَا أَصَابَكُم مِّن سَيِّئَةٍ فَمِن نَفْسِكَ. And whatever calamity comes to you, it's from your own source. Whatever sins we have, it is our own. But whatever good we have, it's from Allah. The fact that I prayed, it's a fadl from Allah. It's a gift from God. I have to thank Him for it. If it's a gift from God and it wasn't of my doing, how can I boast? But if I forget it's coming from Allah and I think that I have achieved it myself, then I will very quickly boast and feel conceited. Look at me. Look how good I am. Look how pious I am. Look how much books I've read. Look how much charity I give. You know, brother, I've done 120 Hajj pilgrimages. How many have you done? I said, okay, brother, you don't need to tell me. I don't want to embarrass you. This is ujub. This is and vanity destroys deeds. It goes against ikhlas. Okay, so that in brief is a description of ujub. There is more to it, but it's a kind of good start. Brother Shafi, inshallah. We'll end with Brother Shafi so we can have a 9 o'clock, inshallah.
I'd just like to ask you one question. For example, I came to the verse today with the intention to show you what the people that I'm blind here. And in the middle of the verse, I just see I've just realized this thing is intention. I just changed my intention as stuff. Now I'm going to do ikhlas, I'll do it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what would be...
So the question was something like, someone came here for the class and had the intention that I'm going to come here with the intention of learning. And then they thought, oh, maybe that's a wrong intention. I should come here in order to draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what's the issue? The issue is generally, it will depend upon every individual, but generally when someone says, I'm coming to the masjid, to the halaqah, the class to learn, hopefully it is to learn so that I can fulfill the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, know how to worship my Lord. As long as those two intentions are there, then how you express them, I want to learn with the kind of ... for the sake of Allah, then alhamdulillah, that's for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But as we all know, it can be possible that I want to learn. I go to my sheikh's lessons because my sheikh will then teach me something, then I go from the sheikh does, and I go and argue with people on the internet or whatever. And my niyyah is, he'll teach me and then I can argue. Because all I want to do is make jidal and jadal and munadara, debates and whatever, because I just like to argue and whatever. And that's the only reason I go to my sheikh's class. You know, and whatever my sheikh is telling me about sunnah to eat with the right hand and be nice to parents, it's all there, but I'm actually looking for the hadith and the dalil and the ayat so I can make the jadal and the munadara. I'm not interested in changing. And the proof of that is that 1 year in my sheikh's class, in the Usthadh class, and I haven't improved one bit. I am the same Abu Aaliyah, or maybe even worse, because I have become more argumentative. I've become more argumentative, and more stubborn, and more full of conceit. But if there is a gradual change, you know, I've grown by an inch in closer to Allah, in outward prayer or charity or something, inshallah, there's some good happening there, inshallah. So each of us will have to decide that. Otherwise, one act of worship sometimes can have different intentions. The main umbrella intention is taqarrubun ilallah, to draw close to Allah. But it could be, for example, in ilm, an alim, when he teaches or when she teaches, they not only have the intention of taqarrubun ilallah, seek closeness to Allah, but they have so that they can lift jahl, lift ignorance from the students, okay, and spread Islam. But those two intentions come under the general intention of taqarrubun ilallah. And there is one act of worship, at least one act of worship, where, for example, in ilm, I cannot pretend to be more knowledgeable than I am. I cannot say to you, brother, mashallah, I memorized Bukhari and Muslim, or I haven't memorized the Quran, truth be told, actually. I've memorized Bukhari and Muslim. And I've given you that impression, either directly or indirectly. Why? Because it'll be lying. It'll be lying. But there is an ibadah where I can actually make you believe about me something I'm not, and I get rewarded for it. Does anyone know what that ibadah is? There is an act of worship where I can make other people believe that I'm something better than I am, and I will get rewarded for it, not punished. Does anyone know what that act of worship is?
With the intention of encouraging the follower?
No, because if I'm not actually like that, for example, I'm encouraging a follower, be nice to your parents, and I'm horrible to my parents. Oh, you who believe, why do you practice that which you do not do? So my encouragement I'll get rewarded for, but I'm going against what I'm preaching. No, something really clear. What was that? Okay, I'll tell you what, it's jihad. Supposing there is a Muslim army with a caliph, and let's just say, for some reason, the Muslim army, all of them are really skinny people, like that, really. So if the enemy ever met that, thought, well, this is a walkover. There's no one like that. They're all really skinny, whatever. In this case, if the person, let's just, I'm making this up. If they were like that, scruff their beard, and they should pretend to be something they're not. So the enemy will think, oh, these people, they're a bit rough and tough. And they put the fear of Allah. So we're allowed to do that, but in most other ibadats, we're not allowed to pretend to be something that we're not, because that goes against ikhlas and sidq, and it's just not true. But at least in one ibadah we can. Okay, not that one fights wars like that anyway. But you understand the point I'm trying to make. I'm trying to say that sometimes an act of worship may have different sub-intentions. But if those sub-intentions are good and pure, connected to the main intention, taqarrubun Allah, inshallah ta'ala, will be worship. And that will include learning.
I meant to say that my intention was wrong. I came in thus to show off for people.
He changed his intention.
And then I changed my intentions, and really when I listening to this, I said, no.
If a person changes the intention from, let's just say, from bad to good, whatever example, from bad to good, in the act of worship itself, then inshallah their action will be accepted. We hope, inshallah ta'ala, and what was wrong before will be wiped away, because a bad deed, follow up a bad deed with a good deed, and it will wipe it away. But to be sure, at the end of that act of worship, we just make istighfar to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness, just to be sure. But Allah is generous, and follow up a bad deed with a good deed, and it will wipe it away. Ibn al-Qayyim rahmatullah alayhi says, in the example that I was given about that tahajjud prayer, and then 12 hours have passed. I mean, he doesn't say 12 hours or anything like that, but he has this discussion where he says, supposing now, why were you up at 4:30 in the night? Oh, I was praying tahajjud. So now khalas, riya, showing off, I've shown off. And that means my deed has been nullified. That means showing off has nullified the deeds, and it's a sin. It's a major sin. Therefore, deed has been nullified, and there is a sin. If, however, I make tawbah, sincere repentance to Allah, because it's a major sin, and major sin requires tawbah, repentance. If I sincerely repent to Allah, Allah will wipe away my sin, and He will return the reward back to me that I got, and because I made tawbah, I get extra reward for making tawbah. And this is why Adam alayhi salam's maqam, before he ate from the tree, or after he ate from the tree and he made tawbah, is higher than before he ate from the tree, and his maqam was always higher. Alayhi salam. His station with Allah after he ate from the tree and he repented to Allah was greater and higher than before he ate from the tree when he had a station with Allah. Because, as some of the Arbab al-Suluk, the spiritual masters say, sometimes when a person suffers from a fever, when they have a good recovery, sometimes they can recover in a way that they are stronger after the fever than they were before the fever. Allah Jalla wa Ala, His Fadl